Hello everyone, my name is Phawx. This is going to be my review on Anbernic's latest device, the RG351m. Thank you very much to Anbernic for sending this device out to me for review. They also sent me the 351p here. I will be sending you directly to their links below. This will be going to Anbernic's official site where you'll see the RG351m. Additionally, I will be sending you over to their official YouTube channel, and I'll have a link for the official Discord. That's where you can go and actually speak with someone that is either working with Anbernic, or there's also developers that are making specific builds for Anbernic devices. We're going to touch base on that in this particular review. My favorite is ArkOS, and we'll get into that a little bit more. Very quickly, what's the difference between the 351p and the 351m? Well, the big thing here is the M for the metal CNC casing. It's extremely nice. It makes the device heavier. It actually makes it so it slides into a pocket better, in my opinion. I've had this metal casing kind of just slide right in where the plastic doesn't. Also, it's lighter. However, I do really like the color styling of the 351p, this being the classic Game Boy Advance color scheme. Now, on my RG351p, this unit actually had Wi-Fi included. The units that they sell now do not. So what winds up happening is they will include a wireless adapter, which is USB-C to USB-A, then a Wi-Fi part on top of that. What winds up happening is you have this tower sitting on top of your device that is just for Wi-Fi purposes. And if you wanted to use that for all the reasons that Wi-Fi makes things easier, either you want to play online with other people using RetroArch and the same cores and the same ROMs, or you want to do RetroAchievements, something that I really love to do, or you just want to be able to update dev builds. So like with ArkOS, you can actually update directly on the device itself without having to take out the SD card, put it into your computer, load up stuff, and then put it back. It makes it so much more convenient that, yes, there is a large price difference. And if the metal casing isn't really what's selling you, for me alone, the Wi-Fi included here as a guarantee is the major selling point. Is it worth that much more? For me, it is. I wouldn't even want to entertain the fact of getting the 351p, knowing that I'd have to put on a stack just to do stuff. I'm not going to carry that stuff with me, so whatever's there is what I'm going to have. It's pretty unfortunate, but if you don't care about Wi-Fi at all, well then, okay, so then get the 351p, because otherwise they're pretty much identical outside of the casing. So let's go ahead and take a look at the specs. It's right on the box itself. So it says built-in Wi-Fi for online sparring. Yes, you can do online gaming, so you can do some net play. Now this one has the aluminum alloy shell, which is a CNC process. Now that's actually super impressive, all right, because the case on this is outstanding. And they're not making millions of these cases, so the price increase for what you're getting out of this aluminum shell is impressive for the small price bump that it is. It's manufacturing these in small numbers and getting the quality that we're getting is excellent. Make no mistake of that. And then everything else is pretty much the same. So we're using the tried and true Rockchip 3326 quad-core SoC. Now there are some debate on frequency. Typically 1.3 gigahertz is what you're going to get on the Anbernic devices. For all intents and purposes, the type of performance that we're getting out of there is solid, especially with the types of emulators that are there. Devs are working on it all the time. Again, we're going to be taking a look at ArkOS on this in a little bit. The 1 gig of RAM is not something that you really need to worry about or care about. If this was an Android-based device, 1 gig of RAM would be a huge red warning. 1 gig of RAM for Android is just not enough, but we're using Lynx here, so that's not a big deal. We have a 3.5-inch 320 by 480 IPS screen. Now, this is what is critical, and a lot of people have pointed it out. It's one of the reasons why I've been kind of playing retro achievement games on GBA almost exclusively on this device. I'm going to go ahead and show you a little bit of that, of my progress. Feel free to send me a friend invite on Retro Achievements, by the way. I like Retro Achievements, and I've been enjoying playing GBA games on this device while doing Retro Achievements. It's actually extremely satisfying. It's like a super Game Boy Advance. Then we have this OCA all-fit screen. This is a laminated part of the screen to the LCD, so this makes sure that the layer that you see between them is non-existent. It's pretty critical, and it's a small feature, but it's actually very important. The battery is a 3500 milliamp hour battery and lasts for 8 hours. Last I clock is around 5 or 6, and it supports micro SD cards up to 256 gigs. What comes included is 64 gigs. So for the most part, you're getting the same thing. You're going to be paying a big premium for that metal shell, and the most important part, the included Wi-Fi. So let's go ahead and start taking a look at this device. Before we go any further, let's see what else is inside Okay, so they give you a charging cable, so it's USB-A to USB-C. Looks about to be a foot and a half or 3 feet. And there's a little manual, which I'm going to skip on for right now. So Anbernic sells these in 2 different colors. They call them Space Gray and Matte Black. I think it's actually, yeah, it's actually listed right there. The version that I have is obviously Space Gray by very quickly looking at it. Let's go ahead and take a look at the controls here. Now, what I find fascinating here is that I also had the same issue initially on the 351p, is that this bottom right corner of the D-pad was initially not super responsive, but it took a little bit to break in, and I found this to be the same case. I've actually been using this a little bit here, and I found this to be the same case. This is starting to break in now. You will have to play this for about a week or so before you're actually going to notice this feel correct. It's a little interesting that that happens, but yeah, that's the case. Then we have these switch-like analog sticks. They are L3 and R3. So they do click in. Additionally, there is rumble on the device itself, and using ArkOS like I prefer, you can actually enable rumble in any emulator that can have rumble, and there's a big suite of them. That's actually all listed on the ArkOS page, which we can take a look at. Now here's these little features here that I really want to kind of point out. The same thing that was on the RG351p is there's this little recessed part for the button here, just this little alcove that they put out here, and then on the other side, the big feature here is this potentiometer-based volume control, so that you can just slide up and slide down, especially on a handheld device. Instead of just having plus and minus buttons to change the volume, this is a very, very nice analog way of changing the volume through these stereo speakers that are right here. Here's the micro SD card slot where they've taped over. This we are definitely going to have to remove because I am going to put ArkOS on this in this particular review. Along the top we have our 2 USB-C ports, and this is the one where you'd be putting in that analog, the adapter to do the Wi-Fi, but we won't need that. But any type of other thing that you're going to be using to connect, if you wanted to, you can. And then we have L1, L2, and R1, R2. On the back, here we have the device itself and what it explains. We still have these little rubber feet. Now these aren't so much for grip, but it's more about just putting it down on a table so that it doesn't move, so that you see that it just doesn't slide around. Now again, the good thing about this is that the analog sticks are relatively low profile. They're actually almost in line with the D-pad and analog sticks. This is actually really important when you're actually putting it into your pocket. These aren't protruding enough that they don't get caught, and the weight of the 351M helps it slide down, especially with the type of material that is the aluminum shell, that it really just helps it go into a pocket. So that's pretty much an overview of the 351M. It can't be understated how very nice this case feels. Also, these buttons are just extremely solid. These face buttons, they feel nice to just travel along and roll your thumb around. The D-pad, again, does take a moment to break in. Give it about a week, and then this will start to feel right. The L1, R1 trigger buttons, they are pretty solid. And then the analog sticks. Now this, I have some reservations around. This is just kind of almost for future-proofing, but I think it's kind of nice to have them there. The amount of games that I use analog sticks is not a tremendous amount. I do like that they went the full way and had clickable L3 and R3, but it's nice to have. I just don't think it's as critical with regard to everything else. Without further ado, let's go ahead and power this device on. When I power it on, you're going to see a little part here. The device will rumble, and this is booting into the official Anbernic build. Now, the one thing that I want to show here, and probably the one thing that some people are going to care about, is the amount of ROMs that they include on the device. So if we just go over to all games, and I just cycle through these. Again, it's a 64 gigabyte micro SD card, and they packed it jam full with ROMs. So again, I don't really recommend this particular Emulec build that they have on here. What I'm going to do instead is I'm going to put ArkOS on this right now. So I'm going to remove this micro SD card. But before I do, I'm going to show you the types of ROMs that they have on here and maybe what you might want to do and take those ROMs off. Copy them before you write ArkOS on there. And I'm going to show you all those steps right now. Okay, so now that we've plugged in the microSD card into a computer, you will see a partition, and this will be easily accessible on a Windows machine. Now, honestly, the most important part right here is the BIOS folder. If we go in here, these might be difficult for you to find, so you should make a backup of this, especially if we're going to be going over to a newer version of, in my instance, I'm going to be using ArkOS, and we're going to want to copy this back onto there because emulators are going to be using these BIOS files to load the emulators and work properly. But if you wanted to get all these other games and stuff that were on here, it's around 48 gigabytes worth of files. So roughly what happens is that you have a little bit of space left over, that 64 gigabyte card, to add other games that you wanted to add on there. But I can see the value for some people that do have difficulty finding ROMs of any sort, that there is value there. But again, the BIOS one is going to be the one that you really want to make sure that you make a backup of before you overwrite that card and image whatever, either it's MULEC or ArkOS or any other new build that comes out for the RG351 or M or P. That's it. That's all I wanted to say. I'm going to take a look at going to ArkOS now. Again, flashing it onto your system is relatively straightforward, but let's go ahead and take a look at what you need to do for ArkOS, and take a look in the description field for a link to go directly to there. If you take a look in the description field below, I will have a link to ArkOS itself. It's important to go ahead and read through this. Christian does a good job of explaining a few things, especially things that have tripped other people up. In this particular instance, I am going to be using Windows to write to it, and there are recommended programs that work here. Especially here, I typically use Balena Etcher, but he is saying not to use it. So Win32 Disk Imager you can use, or you can also use the USB image tool. So either one of those are recommended by Christian, so feel free to use one of those if you're on Windows. Then you're just going to go ahead and go to the download link, which is right here. So you can see the download links right here. We're going to be going for the RG351p and the RG351m. Use either Google Drive or Mega. Go ahead and download that. Once you get that image, you're just going to want to flash that to the microSD card itself, and then plug it into the RG351m or P, whichever version you have. And then it's going to go ahead and expand that partition. I'm going to go ahead and show you what that looks like right now. All right, let's make this easy. You're going to want to right click on this PC, go to Manage, and then go to Disk Management. Obviously, you want the microSD card inserted into your computer at this time. Disk 1 is the 64 gig microSD card that you can see right here. You can see that each one of these volumes I'm going to go ahead and purposefully delete. Now make sure that you have had a backup of these files before you start deleting these, including those BIOS files. Those BIOS files are going to be the most important files for emulators to run properly. So at the very least, you're going to want those backed up, but make sure you back up the entire microSD card, and then you can add and change whatever you want. After you delete all the volumes, go ahead and create a new simple volume. This is just a temporary measure just to make sure that the imaging process is a lot faster. Once you have a specific volume, a specific drive letter, then you can easily point to what you need to point to. All right, so I've used Win32 Disk Imager, and I've loaded up ArkOS version 1.5.image right here. And then you can see that the F drive, the drive that I just formatted out of that microSD card, is just a single drive letter now, and I clicked Start. And now that is writing the ArkOS image to that microSD card. After this, we're going to go ahead and remove the card, put it back into the 351M for the 351M to automatically partition out the new size, all the contiguous space. Remember, this file is only 1.5 gigabytes, so we have to expand that to 64 gigabytes. By putting it back into the 351M, on first insertion, it's looking to do this job. Then we can take it back out again and then copy the files back over, and then you have your ArkOS build complete. Alrighty, so now what we want to do is take out the microSD card where you just flashed it, because what needs to happen here is the image is only at a small file size. When we insert it into here, it is going to grow the file space. It's going to extend the file space on the SD card automatically when inserting here. So you're going to want to do that, power it on, then let it finish, power it off, then we're going to take it out, and then we're going to copy the stuff back onto here. Okay, so this is the part where it tells you the partition side, so press A to finish. And just as the disclaimer said, it is going to reboot a few times before it completely finishes. Once you see it go into the OS proper, that's when you can press start and exit and shut down the system completely. Once that finishes, then we can take that out and then we can start copying the files back. Okay, so you're gonna press start, you're gonna go to quit, and you're gonna shut down system. You say yes there. This is gonna turn off. You wait for the light to go off. It's off. Now we can go ahead and take out the SD card, and we're gonna put it back into our system and then copy the stuff back. Alrighty, so we've gone ahead and moved the ROMs back to ArkOS. If we enable Wi-Fi on the RG351m and enable remote services, Ark is the user and password, and you can get to it via the IP address on the RG351m itself, which you can look at through the network interface on the RG351m. It'll tell you whatever the IP address is after you've connected it to your Wi-Fi. Connecting through here produces this pretty nice result. You can also do FTP if you just want it to be simple, but if we go to GBA, now again, the main reason that I like these devices is because I want to play all of the games that I'm looking to play. I want to make use of RetroAchievements. Now, unfortunately, a lot of these ROMs that are in here are trimmed or hacked up in such a manner that they're not super awesome for me. So I'm going to go ahead and just delete all of these out of the GBA folder, because I don't really care about them, and I have my own list. And I'm going to add my own ROM to this that I know is verified to be good, because you actually need it to be, there needs to be a CRC check that passes for the ROM, otherwise RetroAchievements won't have any idea what kind of game it is. Alright, so I've clicked and dragged 3 files over here. You can see that's loading up over here. This is going to reload the page, and you can see those 3 files are here. This is just very quickly to demonstrate that the game has hooked into RetroAchievements just fine. A lot of these achievements I've already unlocked. If you are interested in RetroAchievements, send me a friend invite. But for right now, let's go ahead and take a look at a bunch of game demos and emulators running on the RG351 before we head to the conclusion. recording. What's up?
Can you pause it?
Let me just record this real quick.
Okay.
This is the conclusion of my review for the Anbernic RG351m. Largely, the biggest reason that I could recommend this particular version isn't because of the metal alloy case, it's because of the included Wi-Fi. That included Wi-Fi is the big reason that I've wanted the RG351p. Having that rock chip is a mature chipset at this point. We've been able to get, in this case, ArkOS 1.5 on this with very little work. It just kind of worked, which is extremely nice. However, if we just kind of count the fact of it being a metal shell, the heaviness of it does offer a benefit when putting it into your pocket. However, one thing that is worth noting is I've had 2 blizzards near me, and because it's metal, it actually does get extremely cold to hold when it's out in the cold, where plastic would be a little bit more resilient to that. So that's one thing to be mindful of, is the thermal conditions that these devices are going to be in. So 3 reasons why you would want Wi-Fi on the device. Online multiplayer, updating ArkOS on here, so any type of custom firmware that you're going to have, you can update the firmware directly on the device itself instead of going online, downloading stuff and putting on the SD card. Scraping sites, getting metadata and other things on your particular ROM set. It's far easier to do on the device itself, and is also a benefit to have Wi-Fi on here. And then 4th is, honestly, I shouldn't put it 4th, it's my favorite feature, and one thing that I touched base on a long time ago when I did the RG351p is the RetroAchievements. It supports sleep states as well, so if you were to power off this device and put it into sleep, it's still on, and then wake it up, RetroAchievements just keeps working. So you get big benefits for just having instant sleep. I really can't recommend it more. However, because of the aspect ratio, there are some systems that are favorable towards the system. So Game Boy Advance is obviously the big one. NeoGeo actually fits well on here. Atari Lynx is not 3x2, but it's close enough that it actually does fit nice, and if you take a look at the Gauntlet gameplay that I showed, it actually looks really, really good. Additionally, Wonderswan, that is not 3x2, but it's close enough in that it actually fills in the 3x2 aspect ratio really, really nice. Any 4x3 game is where you're really going to have issues, and you're going to see some pixel squishing and some distortion, which I've shown in the videos just prior to this. So there are benefits, there are cons. Now, if we were just going to say which version do you want, which one do you get, the 351M or the 351P, largely comes down to, do you care about integrated Wi-Fi? If you do, based on the reasons that I said, then I would definitely recommend getting the 351M. Yes, it's a pretty big premium, but that wireless stack that you're going to put on there, you're not going to walk around, you're not going to be using that all the time. It's going to be a pain. That's basically the main reason that I would recommend the 351M. There is a new version, the 351V, that is coming out, which will have a 4x3 display from Anbernic, which should be relatively soon. And that is going to be targeting devices that favor 4x3 aspect ratios, and as well as having a larger resolution. So that's pretty much it for the 351M. It remains a continuation on how good the 351P is. I can definitely recommend it. Largely, again, it comes down to Wi-Fi. Do you care about it? Yes or no? Yes, get the 351M. No, get the 351P. That's it. As always, guys, thank you for your time, and thanks for watching.